be under your chairmanship today in what I think is a really important debate for a lot of our constituents, and to remember thousands, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people who worked in dangerous industries during the war to keep our defences going during that period of time. I want to talk and say a little bit about the munitions factory at Aycliffe, which is now Newton Aycliffe. In 1941, when the Royal Ordnance Factory number 59 was opened in Aycliffe, the town of Newton Aycliffe didn't exist. That became a new town in 1947. But where the Royal Ordnance Factory is now the second largest industrial estate in the northeast. And if you go onto the industrial estate, you can still see the blast walls and some of the buildings where the munition workers worked during that period. And at its peak in 1943, it employed 17,000 people, and 90% of them were women. And there were 17,000 out of something like 64,500 munitions workers around the country who actually filled the shells and the bullets. And it was obviously the work they did was very important. It actually, received visits from Winston Churchill, from King George VI, even Gracie Fields. And from what I understand, she gave a very beautiful rendition of the Lord's Prayer in front of an audience there, which is well remembered by many of the people who worked there. Now, the work was obviously very dangerous, and they filled the shells and bullets. And I understand from a 1940s HMSO study of what the wartime ROFs did. At Aycliffe, they produced over 700 million bullets during its period of operation. And the work was extremely repetitive, fragmented and boring, but high levels of companionship existed amongst the women as they risked their lives on a daily basis filling the bombs and bullets. Many of the women who started work were 18 and over. The average age was 34, and you had to be no older than 50 to work there. But apparently someone called Mrs. Dillon said she was 49, but was actually 69, and was the best worker there. She only lost 2 days of work in 2.5 years, and she received the British Empire Medal from the King for the work that she did there. The women who worked there became known as the Aycliffe Angels. And the reason why they became known as the Aycliffe Angels is that Lord Haw-Haw, in many of his wartime broadcasts, used to say the little angels of Aycliffe won't get away with it. And he said this in numerous broadcasts over the period of time of the operation. And although I don't think there was ever a raid on the RAF station there, because obviously it was secret, they did work in very terrible situations. And as far as the Aycliffe Angels is concerned, I've got a personal interest in this because my grandma was actually one of those who worked there, Isabella Woods, who worked there during that period. And I just want to quote something from Dorothy Addison, who spoke to, I believe, to the Northern Echo about her time at that station, and she gave a description of what she actually did. And what she said, I was on Group 5, and our job was to weigh cordite, put it into linen bags, and sew gunpowder on top. This was put into 25-pounder shells, and the next block had to put the detonator on top. We were searched, and if anyone was found with matches, it was instant dismissal. We wore protective clothing and shoes that didn't cause any friction, and our hair had to be tucked in a turban. I remember one girl in the next block getting her hair in a machine, and eventually she died. German bombers often came over, and all the lights had to be out. One night they came over, we knew the sound. The sirens went, and we all had to go into the shelters. The sky was lit up with hundreds of chandeliers, our name for the bombs. So this is what they had to put up with day in, day out for the period of the war. And I just want to mention also the people that we know about who actually died. On the 2nd of May, in an explosion, the 2nd of May 1945, just days before the end of the war, Isabella Bailey, Elsie Barrett, James Bunton, William Clark Hobson, William Mitchell, Christopher Seagrave, Edmund Smith and Alice Wilson all died in an explosion on that day, just days before the end of the Second World War. And one of those who died was Phoebe Moorlands as well, who died on the 20th, the night of the 20th and the 21st of February 1942, along with Irene Irvin, Alice Dixon. And her husband was in the Navy fighting the war, and it was thought that he had the most dangerous of jobs. But it was his wife at home who actually was killed, and she left 2 children. Now, this is all of what our ancestors had to put up with. My family and probably many more families, either have relatives or know people who worked in those industries. And I want to just pay tribute actually to Great Aycliffe Town Council, because they have done their bit over the years to remember the Aycliffe Angels. They produced a memorial certificate, so to speak, which they've given to the survivors. My grandma was awarded one posthumously. She died 30 years ago, and it's on the coffee table in the sitting room of my mum's house now to this day. And what the Great Aycliffe Town Council also did, they helped to prepare and build a memorial in the town centre to the men and the women, primarily women who worked in this industry there. And like I said, Newton Aycliffe is now a thriving town, massive industrial estate. And the town itself didn't exist until after the war. And from what I understand, all there was fields. The reason why they picked that site was because it tended to get very misty, so the factory itself could be hidden from bombers. But this is part of the history of that town, and it's a proud history of that town. So I think it's only right, and I want to congratulate the member for Stoke South for managing to secure with this debate, that these people should be recognised. They weren't on the front, they weren't fighting in the desert or in the jungle or at Normandy, but they were helping to keep the war effort going. And some of them lost their lives, and it was a very dangerous industry. And I think a permanent national memorial is something that would suit their endeavours.
Davis.